Hello. We're on the bus in Tel Aviv. Hi, Nan.
Hi, Mark.
Someone else.
Hey, Stan.
Smile.
For the bus.
Direct from Hawaii.
We're together in December. We did.
We'll find out. Baruch Hashem, did you? We'll have a little bit of downtime, because you've probably been forewarned by Rabbi Adath. ITC trips are not vacations. Almost a monopoly.
A nation is not ever served up on a silver platter. That you have to work, you have to be inventive, you have to be dynamic, and especially when there are people who would stand in the way of that and not be so thrilled that we are here. That's a very serious thing to to consider. And so what we're learning and seeing today are some modern miracles of how through ingenuity and work a nation was not served up but built. Together we'll say the English. Ribbono shel olam modim anachnu lach shehevetanu al Eretz Yisrael b'shalom. Yehi ratzon shezichronot toldot amenu ba'aretz הקדושה יחדשו בנו רגשות נאמנות לך ולעמך. מהרה יתקיים חזון נביאך כי בשמחה תצאו בשלום תובלון. ואסף נדחי ישראל ונפוצות יהודה יקבץ מארבע כנפות הארץ. ונאמר Amen. Together.
Master of the universe, we thank you for bringing us in peace to the land of Israel. May the memories of our people's history in this sacred land inspire us to renew dedication to you and to your people.
It serves as an underground bullet factory that produces 9mm bullets for a weapon that's called the Sten submachine gun. Okay guys, turn this machine on for a little bit for us to feel what these people felt down here. These are the same original machines that were working down here once and producing.
And he's taking them around the old city of Jerusalem. And he takes them around the whole... And it,
Excuse me? When I came down this tunnel.
I know what that means.
Yes.
No, it's a good group.
I think that's, I think he was explaining the thought behind.
That's Maimonides too.
But the letters are all Hebrew, but the languages.
Historically, I always tell the story about the negative. There's this line which we say, nothing to do with Maimonides, but it's this line that we say in the 126th Psalm, right? When we're doing Birkat Hamazon, the Shir Amal B'Shuva, right? Okay. And it says, Ka'afikim ba'negev, Ka'afikim ba'negev, which is a line that for some 1,200 or 1,400 years we had no idea what it meant. Because it means like raging rivers in the Negev desert. It sounds like we should return to Zion like raging rivers in the Negev desert. That sounds like a ridiculous thing, right? The whole point of a desert is that you don't see so many raging rivers, right?
All right. There's a map of the Middle East over here. At least some of it. Okay, over here is the Mediterranean Sea, and you got Egypt and Sudan and Libya. Over here you got Jordan in pink, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, all that kind of stuff. Where's Israel? Right, on the fold there, that little specky yellow, almost obscured by the fold. Now, this is the Arab world, and this is Israel. You can understand that this is an existential threat to the Arab world. Now, 1 billion Muslims and about a similar number of Westerners have been convinced that's the case, because Israel is the major cause of unrest in the world, as we know. And in 1967, the Egyptians and the Syrians go, Israel! They try very hard. Luckily for us, it doesn't work. And we live. Not only do we live, but all of a sudden, this and this little area over here, and also we're doing pretty well. we're doing pretty well. We're like, we're so good. No one's going to start with us. We're the best army in the world. As we know, it's going to be problematic because in 1973, after secretly going, I said, Israel. Pretty much. Except this time they were much better prepared because they knew we were pretty good. Surprise attack. On what day did they pick to attack? Yom Kippur. Now their thought was, Yom Kippur, the Jews at their weakest. But actually it was the biggest gift we had, because on Yom Kippur there were two amazing advantages to an army that relies on its reservists. Number one, you could find all the reservists really quickly. Because on Yom Kippur everyone's either at shul or at home. And there isn't anywhere else to be. That's A. Remember, there's no cell phones. The only way to get the reservists is knock on doors. They're there. Number two, how do the reservists get to the front lines? The roads are empty. Everyone can get where they need to go quickly. And that was the two big advantages which made well to save the day. Right now it's sort of hiding just under the clouds. These trees are in the way. You can see the snow streaks. On top of Mount Hermon, there's an army base up there called the Eyes of the Nation. From there they look into Damascus, right, which is kind of useful. If President Assad sneezes, they know what color it was. That's the level of stuff. Over here, this listening post, they can hear me over here. Oh, Mom. They're probably not interested in what I have to say. So we rely not more now on electronics and technology rather than just people on the ground. That's where we are.
A set of folders in Word in Microsoft Windows.
Mashiach Alleyway. Why is it called Mashiach Alleyway? So there are two answers. Number one is that if you look through here, you can just about see hills in the background. The hill in the background is Mount Meron. Mount Meron is the resting place of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Who is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? If we think of Tzfat as the city of Kabbalah, of Jewish mysticism,
Obviously.
not yet been done up.
What's considered new construction here, like 1880?
So Tzfat has just grown up in layers, so depends who you're speaking. If you live in a house from the 1700s, so the 1800s, is new construction. This was also the headquarters of the Haganah, the defense of the city. I jumped to the end and bring the end here earlier. In 1948, miraculous things occurred that we'll get to. Most places in Israel, on the electric boxes, this is many of you have probably noticed we're in a fairly hilly region. And where you have hills, you automatically end up with valleys in between them.
Feel like you're in the We're going this way.
It's the Abu Hav Synagogue.
To bow to God.
Very cool. I will take that. Well, you're my problem.
Change the settings.
So we're the view from Mount Scopus.
At some point in time, King David decides that this is going to be the place where the capital of the Jewish people, the center of our souls, the point at which we all look and pray, and we will use this this teaching over and over again, no matter where you are in the world. If you're in China, you look west. If you're in Balakinwood, you look east. If you're in Sfat, you look south. If you're in Eilat, you look north. This is the place to be, and the places where Jews had always prayed to be for so long. So let's sing together. Let's sing together the words of Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, and recognize the final verse is a repopulation, a return to Jerusalem. Avir harim salukayayin v'reach oranim nisa beruach arba'im v'im kol hamonim uftar dematiran ba'emen shvuya hachalomach ha'ir asher badan yoshevet Yerushalayim shel zahav v'shel nechoshet v'shel or halo v'chol shirayim ani kinor Yerushalayim shel zahav v'shel nechoshet v'shel or halo v'chol shirayim ani. The next word is the word that means lamentation. Echa yarshu borot hamayim kikar hashu reka. It's all empty. V'en pokeret harabayim v'irati. We can't see the Temple Mount. U'meharot asher basela yadlo truzot v'en yored el yam hamelech v'terech yerichov Yerushalayim shel zahav v'shel nechoshet v'shel or halo lechol shirayich ani kinor ach b'voi hayom ashir lach v'lach likshor tarim Hatotim mitzir banayich u'me'acharon ha'meshorerim Kishmech zoreh v'tas batayim Keneshikat sarah Im eshkachech, if I forget you, Jerusalem Asher kula zahav Yerushalayim shel zahav v'shel nechoshet v'shel or halo lechol shirayim ani kinor avuchatzem mizrach kadima ayin b'tzion Sophia
Of this society.
We're not coming back.
They're walking poles.
The Dung Gate?
Are we being served? I don't know.
Going through into the old city.
Some kind of store over
Mummers pray without the mummers.
Did you get a photo?
So these walls that we're looking at, they're about 500 years old. So that's a recent vintage. Looking at the Kotel Plaza.
Western Wall. The Kotel Plaza is something that was invented by the postcard. Right.
Good.
This is the Mount of Olives. Learn about the talus, which we brought all the way from
So
the
it's the
chapel.
renewal ceremony getting ready.
Perhaps some of you may recognize this talit. Yes, this is we use this over the children on the high holiday time. Turn to the person with whom you have found yourself for these many years and say Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov.
Now turn to one another and say Mazel Tov. Baruchim habaim b'shem Adonai. Welcome in the name of God. There is an extra line when you have a synagogue-based chuppah, a synagogue-based wedding that you add to this. And since we are at the world's oldest and largest gathering of Jewish community in the form of a synagogue, we will say, may we be welcome in this house of God. And then I'll offer the following words, and we'll say it in English right after I finish. Mihi adir al hakol, mihi baruch al hakol, mihi gadol al hakol, hu yivarech et re'im ha'ahuvim, haba'im hayom liveracha. Let's say together the English. Bruchim, Habaim, welcome. May all those who have come be blessed in the name of God, from this, the house of God. May the one who is supreme in power, blessing, and glory, bless our friends in love who have come here today for a moment of blessing. Friends in love is in quotes because it is a quote from the traditional liturgy of a wedding, Re'im Ha'ahuvim, which means friends in love. After many, many years of being together, I know that you know that it is friendship that gets you, that sweetens the good times and gets you through the most difficult times. It is that aspect of your relationship that we should especially renew and sanctify at this time. What I'm going to ask is that if you have your ring off, turn and face the person whom you love. This should not be a hard one.
Don't turn too far, Norman. You'll get the wrong person.
Nobody here is wrong.
And we'll start with the, in the traditional wedding ceremony, the first time round, the man started and then the woman did it. So now we're going to do the woman first, okay? We'll ask the wife to place the ring on the man's finger. Traditionally, in Jewish tradition, it was believed that the index finger was a direct line to the heart. So point to the person you love and say the words together as that you can find on the card. Ani, and place the first ring on the finger. And now we'll switch the other way around and point to the man that you love. And together again. And together in the English, I am
My beloved, and my beloved is mine.
כשהם שנכנסו לברית נישואין וחזרו לחופה הזאת At this moment, as we know you have already entered the covenant of marriage and here return to this chuppah, we pray that this be a marking of hitchadshut, of a renewal of spirit and a lifetime of Torah and good deeds. Let's all say together a line of giving thanks. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam haso. This line of chesed, chasdo, means love. And so it is a line not only of thanks, but of love, as we say together in the English. Give thanks to God, for God is good. God's love is eternal. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'higiyanu, Kol kahala, kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kahala, kol mitzhalot chatanim mechubatam, une'arim mishten neginatam, baruch atah, misameach ish im isha, Nancy and Mark, 30 is the numeric equivalent of the letters of the words yad b'yad, hand in hand. And be careful of the glass.
Nancy and Mark getting.
And I'll offer one last blessing, and then of course we'll say Mazel Tov as you step down.
Now the woman get to step this way?
That's something I work. You can both
The
step down.
You put your foot down, she'll step on top of it.
Yehivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you all of us here together, and watch over us all the days of our life. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God smile upon us and bring us a sense of great simcha as we have experienced together and will continue to experience together. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'aseim lecha shalom. And most of all, and most importantly of all, may God grant us all a lifetime of shalom, peace, wholeness, and happiness in a world that is filled with shalom. As together we all say, Amen. Amen.
Go ahead, you go do it.
You're
here.
Want me to do it? No, I'll do it. You can do it together.
So the shoulder goes up the steps, buddy. You go one step. You go, they're still here. And
This is the base of a big staircase.
The Romans destroyed the temple.
Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught, if you don't know which way you are facing, you're just supposed to direct your heart towards Jerusalem. The entire Jewish world is your congregation at your back, and you are the shaliach, you are the emissary, you are the sender of all of those prayers. All of the people leading services in every synagogue facing this point, everywhere around the world, is focused at you, and when you touch that wall, you are bringing those prayers straight to the focal point of all of Judaism. You are the shaliach tzibur, you are the prayer emissary of the entire Jewish world, because everyone is facing you, they are at your back, and you are bringing it. And not just the people who are currently praying, but the people who pray in general, and generations upon generations upon generations of Jews who couldn't have a Shaliach Tzibur to send the prayers directly to this focal point.
There were still Jews living in Jerusalem. 65 years later, after the next revolt, the Bar Kokhba revolt, Jews were thrown out of Jerusalem and were not allowed to inhabit it, were allowed to visit one day a year, and that's all. When the Muslims came in the 600s, they were the ones who allowed the Jews to re-inhabit Jerusalem. There was never a very big community at that time, but what there was had as their main synagogue for hundreds of years just inside this gate over here.
Somebody else just took it.
You almost created a major incident, you know.
Oh, I didn't. You know what? When he was talking, I wasn't listening. I was reading the facts.
I wouldn't mind you coming down. I don't make the rules, though.
What happened? Did somebody
Nothing.
say,
I caught you in time.
Yeah.
So somebody had a fit.
Did you get me against the wall?
No, I didn't. So why don't you go against the wall? This is the desert outside of Jerusalem.
Yeah,
是利用你的重力吧。
still in use. Here's the other cables.
Oh, that one's much nicer.
Guys, we're gonna go along this path over here. We're gonna start by our only longest. All for people. There's no difference between a man's and a woman's mikveh, so we don't know who is using it.
We're entering a large bathhouse.
My decoration have this stuff on. Yeah.
You're over here.
We didn't go.
I don't remember this.
Oh, okay. Cannot disturb the rabbi's talking. These pillars would hold up a false floor. In between the real floor and the false floor, you'd have a furnace, superheat the floor. You could either have an enormous, usually copper, but not necessarily, bowl of water.
Rabbi Gamliel was no slouch. He not only was a learned rabbi, he was himself very wealthy and very influential, had many Roman counterparts, and he interacted with the Roman leadership as well. And the story goes that Rabbi Gamliel needed to go to the bathhouse. He decided he wanted to go to the bathhouse. Not the mikveh, the merchatz, the bathhouse. The schwitz, thank you. I couldn't think of the Yiddish word. So, and so he goes, and his students see him go into the bathhouse, and outside of the bathhouse, he walks right past the statue of Aphrodite. This was the bathhouse that was adorned by Aphrodite. And so, of course, while he's going in the schwitz, there's all this, oh, can you believe what the rabbi did? Did you look in his shopping cart? I heard he has something in there. Oh my gosh, okay, etc., etc. It's all this scandal. And so they decide to go in. His students say, go in and say, Rabbi Gamliel, everyone's talking out there. You walked past the statue of Aphrodite. This is the bathhouse of Aphrodite. How could you do that? Oh, so he says, look, I'm taking a schwitz. Will you give me a couple seconds here? We don't talk about matters like this. So finally he comes back out of the bathhouse, and they say, and everyone, scandal, scandal. At which point, Rabbi Gamliel says, here's what I need you to do now that I'm out of the bathhouse. Chill a little bit after the schwitz. He says the following. He says, we don't make a bathhouse and go into a bathhouse in order to worship and adore Aphrodite. The statue of Aphrodite was there in order to bring some beauty to the bathhouse. Don't worry about it so much. Sometimes a bathhouse is just...
In their Seder, they're talking about what it means to be free. To die as free people. To be free to serve God only. Their value of freedom was so extreme that instead of just talking about it, they actually did it. Now, I'm not saying we have to eat what they did, and please God, we will never, ever, ever be challenged with the dilemma that they had. We have to sit and admire the fact that they took their value to the nth degree. Because we all have values. It's like a classic value everyone agrees with, telling the truth. Honesty is a good value, right? If you don't think so, just pretend. Now, we're all challenged in life sometimes where an itsy-bitsy little lie, a white lie, can get us out of a lot of trouble. And most of the time, we end up doing that. If anyone here can say they've never lied, you know, I'll take my hat off to you. But I do. These people had a value that was a little bit more difficult, but they carried it through to the end. And 2,000 years later, we are still learning their story, being inspired by it.
You guys start at one end and move your way around.
Start at your end.
This end here?
We can start here. Go ahead. Look. Let's wash it. Wait, what is it? I don't know.
Does it have letters?
Looks that way. Does it have letters? Larry, read this. Look, what do you say?
It's a lamed. That's Eliezer. It's the beginning of the word.
That's cool. Is that
It says made in Thailand.
Look at this. I don't know.
You
Like a letter.
have made an important archaeological find.
Okay, let's see.
Don't break our bubble.
Do tell us, what is
It's
it?
breaking my heart. No, it's just random.
It's
Okay.
And on the far side of it is Yad Vashem. On the top of it is the tombs of the great people amongst the nation, presidents, prime ministers, Herzls, and the like. And it's always been, unfortunately, the price that we've had to pay and continually are charged to live here. And you could spend weeks on end from morning to night learning the stories, some of the stories, of those who lived in this country and died for it and are buried here. The first person I wanted to mention is a young man over here by the name of Roy Klein, who's buried over here. Roy Klein was the most senior officer killed in the Second Lebanon War in 2006. The young man, like everybody else, joined the army, was successful. They sent him for sergeant's training course. He was particularly successful as a squad sergeant. They sent him to office. That was where his direction lay. And over the next 8 or 9 years, he mixed his time studying Torah and getting a college education. And the army wanted him back. And he spent a couple of years stopping his college education and Torah studies and returned to the army. Back and forth for a little bit, eventually gets appointed the deputy battalion commander. It's a full-time position. And he goes eventually with his troops into Lebanon in 2006. At one point in time, he's with his close troops, a group of about 10 soldiers who are with him, and a hand grenade lands right in the little courtyard they are, in the middle of their little circle. Now, I don't know how much you know, but please God, you'll never have to. When the pin of a hand grenade is pulled, you usually have 4 to 4.5 seconds. Now, you don't know how long ago the pin was pulled, which means you actually have no time for anything. With this yell of Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Roy Klein jumps on the grenade so that with his body, his troops' lives will be saved. That's essentially what happened, leaving behind a wife and 3 small children. And this is not the only story in Israeli history of people who jumped on a grenade. There's 4 or 5 other stories throughout 65 years. But it's a level of individual heroism that's not that something happens, you give it some thought, you go home and you sleep on it, and you decide what you're going to do. This is an immediate choice that someone makes to give their lives to save that of their friends and comrades. And that's one of the many versions of heroism that jump out at us. But 3 tombs along is the tomb of Yosef Goodman. There's this young man over here. Yosef Goodman for me is a personal story because Yosef is the guy that served me pizza for about 15 years. A little less, maybe 13. Yosef's father, Marvin, was very successful on the New York Stock Exchange. His dream was to make Aliyah, and one day he did. Makes Aliyah, bring his family to live in the town of Efrat. We're going to drive past a little later this afternoon. And he's done well on the stock exchange. He doesn't need to work for money. He's always dreamed to open a pizza store. And so he opened the family pizza store, and living not far away, this was my pizza store. And all 8 children of the Goodman family, one by one, worked in the pizza store. And we all got to know Yosef and his brothers very well. It's like going to your local. And when Yosef hits 18, like everybody else, he goes to the army. And he tries very hard to do the best he can do. And eventually gets accepted to an elite unit within the elite volunteer unit of the paratroopers with his red beret. And they do all sorts of stuff that even I don't really know very much about. A lot of stuff involved going behind enemy lines. And one day, a couple of years into his service, they are practicing with a new experimental parachute that's very much lighter and can take them all sorts of places and much more control. And they're going for a night parachute test exercise. Now, one of the things with parachutes is, I don't know if you've ever been parachuting, you're never supposed to cross over a parachute that's below you. Because the way that physics works is that the bottom parachute essentially steals the air from the one above. And you can imagine what happens. Yosef's commander accidentally drifted over Yosef's parachute, and his parachute lost its air, as it were, and he begins to plummet down. And Yosef catches him. The problem is that as opposed to regular big parachutes that can carry a lot, these experimental ones can only carry one person. And their parachute also begins to start plummeting. And Yosef realizes that there's no way that his parachute can hold the two of them. And after he's clipped his commander on, he takes his combat knife out and he cuts himself free from his parachute so that his commander will live. He was too near the ground for his reserve chute to open, and unfortunately Yosef lost his life on that night. Everybody remembers Yosef Goodman. But the story doesn't end there. You can imagine Yosef's parents, Anne and Marvin, who dreamed to make Aliyah and give what they could to the state, never dreaming that that was what they would have asked to give. The next year, Yosef's brother turns 18. It's time for him to go to the army. Now, in this country, if you've lost someone in your family in combat, in order to join a combat unit, you need your parents' signature for permission. And Yosef's brother comes to his parents with this document asking for permission. And his parents are, we've already given one son to the state of Israel. How can we put ourselves in a position of risking that again? And Yosef's brother says, look, Mom and Dad, this is what you came to Israel for. You came to give the maximum of yourself to your people, and you educated us to give always the most that we can give, to be the most that we can be, and never do anything less than that. And this is what I feel is the pinnacle of everything you've brought us to. And with tears in their eyes, Mordechai and Anne signed the permission, and Yosef's brother is accepted into the same unit as Yosef. I'm happy to tell you that he's finished his years in the military and he's fine and complete. And the next brother was accepted into the same unit. It's like a family story. The fourth brother went to a different combat unit to be different. But each one by one, from serving pizza, right, they go to serving the people of the state of Israel at large. And each one of them fulfills the dream of their parents, on the one hand, to be the most they can be and give the most they can give to the state of Israel. And hopefully never fulfilling the nightmare, right, that you'll sometimes be called to give everything that you can. And soldier by soldier, Mordechai and Anne signed that document, each time with tears in their eyes, never knowing that when one of them says, "Bye, Mom," with a little kiss on the forehead on a Sunday morning, that they're ever going to see them again. But to an extent, that's the challenge that the state of Israel is still living amongst in 2013. And every Sunday morning, there are thousands of mostly young men who go off with a, "Bye, Mom, bye, Dad, look after yourself. Replays the game that we'll see you next Friday." Sometimes you don't. And everyone's aware of that, and everyone's prepared for that. And everybody prays and prays and prays that that is the gift that they will never be asked to give to the people of Israel. But knowing in the back of their hearts that sometimes that's exactly what happens. Is the heroism of Yosef Goodman different from the heroism of Ro'i Klein or any of the thousands of young people here? I don't think so. How many people do you have to save to be a hero? One is already enough. When the definition of hero comes up, everyone will have their own, and I don't know what the answer is. But my version is, a hero is an ordinary person who in extraordinary circumstances steps up to the plate. If you want no finer example of that, I want to see one more here. A fellow Philadelphian of yours.
Michael Levin as Mikey because he was a camper at Ramah.
Oh my.
And he wasn't in my bunk, my cabin, when I was on staff, but I worked with him and his age group and his friends many times. And he was known at Ramah at camp because he had shpilkus. He couldn't sit still. He was always unsettled. He was often just a little on edge or unhappy, and he went through camp, and camp was a very good environment and supportive to him. But he always had this sort of unsettled piece of him. And I didn't see him for many years after, for several years after he finished going through the entire camp cycle. And I saw him again after he had made Aliyah, and several of you have commented on the sandwich shop New Delhi. And I was there with a couple of congregants from Detroit, and all of a sudden this guy, now Mikey had always been the sort of pipsqueak in the bunch, right? This enormous guy came up behind me and gave me the type of hug where you sort of can't appreciate it anymore because you're not breathing. And I turned around, and he was no longer able to be called Mikey. Let's just put it that way. Michael Levin, who had made Aliyah and had joined the paratroopers and was at that time what we call a chayal boded, which means a lone soldier, a soldier that does not have family in Israel, but is then in many ways by the army and the whole country embraced because of that. So he was a paratrooper. He was on, just a night out in Jerusalem, and he gives me this huge hug. We talk for just a few minutes, and he goes on his way. And I remember thinking, here's this guy who couldn't sit still for a second, this kid, and now he's this huge man who is defending Israel, and all I could think of is, man, has he found his place? He was so settled. He was so sure of who he was in a way that I had never seen in him, and he had really come into his own, and it was just so great to see that. And I was just thrilled about that. And I remarked to a couple of other Ramah alumni, Ramah Poconos alumni, I saw Mikey and he looks great, he's doing great. That summer was 2006, and it was the Second Lebanon War. And one of the things that happens with chayalim bodedim, lone soldiers, is that their leave is sort of accumulated in a way that they can then go and visit their family. Harriet and Mark are his parents. And so he was home for a little bit when the war broke out, and immediately he said, I gotta go back, it's time for me to serve. And his commander said, look, it's okay, you're home with your family, you'll come up to the front when you were supposed to come back, it's no big deal. He refused. He got on the next plane, kissed his mother and father, much like Ruvain described about on a Sunday morning. He kissed his mother and father and went into war. And sadly, shortly thereafter, in a firefight in southern Lebanon, he lost his life. He died on the 7th of Av. And when, of course, none of us can even imagine what that's like to, from afar, the parents being contacted to say, you have to come to Israel now to bury your child. And so they arrived, Mark and Harriet, in Israel on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, a traditional prayer morning, which was to be to be the burial. And they were taken here to Mount Herzl. And as Harriet tells the story, they didn't know what was going to happen. They had even had a conversation as to whether he should be buried. You know, there was the option, of course, for him to be buried in Philadelphia where they could visit him. And she herself said, you know, this is where he was, this is where he wanted to be, this was his home, this is where he found that sense of being settled. He'll be buried on Mount Herzl. So they get to Israel, and they sort of assumed, you know, he's a Chayal Boded. They'll get up there and they'll do what they need to do. It'll be a terrible day, one of the worst days in their life, I'm sure, and they'll just go home, and that'll be it. But there was a problem, because there was a tremendous amount of traffic. And they assumed maybe it was part of Tisha B'Av. It's not really a day to remember. There's a Yom HaZikaron, there's an Israel Memorial Day for soldiers who have fallen. But they said maybe that's what it is. It was a very hot day, but it was just almost impossible to get up to the site of the burial. And they eventually made their way through. And finally, even though she was, of course, only thinking of her son, finally Harriet and Mark, they said, well, what is going on here today? They asked someone, and someone in the crowd turned around and said, as a Chayal Boded who lost his life, Michael Levine. And there was a concern that there wouldn't be a minyan for Kaddish to bury him. And so from around the country, busloads of people had come to Mount Herzl for the funeral.
Oh my goodness.
And she turned and she said, I am the mother of that Chayal Boded. And of course the crowd parted and allowed her to come forward, and his comrades literally buried him. They did the burial as often is the case in Israel. So in his memory and as a tribute, a couple of things have happened. First of all, if you've heard of the Michael Levin Lone Soldier organization, they continue to offer tribute to his memory by supporting lone soldiers who are in the army here in Israel. But she tells this story, Harriet and Mark, they tell this story over and over and over again. The first time that I had the opportunity to be here and break away from a group to visit after his burial was a couple of years later. And when I wanted to go the first time, you know, on my own before I was with a group. And so I went, and I was just sort of scouting it out, and I saw a group of Israeli teenagers come around here, and one came, a group, and they saw me sort of standing here, and they asked who I was, and I said, you know, I told them a little bit of how I knew Mikey. And they laughed because the idea of Mikey, right, for them, I mean, here's this hero, right? And I said, you know, I just wanted to be here because I didn't know who visited his grave, but here you see all of this Philly sports paraphernalia, which has become a custom to place here because he was a huge Philly sports fan. So here you can pass this stuff and place something. And I said I didn't know who was going to be here, and I wanted to just be able to say to his parents, who I see periodically in Philadelphia, that I was, you know, here. And so the group leader of this group of teens said to me, Tagid lehorav, tell his parents, Tamid yesh mevakrim lekever shel Mikey. Always there are people, Israelis, who come in and visit this grave. It's never alone. It's never what they had feared by burying him here, that they would come, they would do the burial, and that would be it. On that day, on Tisha B'Av, it was packed with tens of thousands of people, and And ever since, there have been groups that come through here and visit here and tell his story and tell of his sacrifice. And so that group, I always take a picture when I'm here of the group that's here, and I email it to Harriet and Mark. But then another group came, and I said Kaddish with them, to have yet another minyan to make sure there was a minyan to say Kaddish at his grave. I thought, in addition to, in a moment, placing, certainly you can place stones, but placing sports paraphernalia, I thought we should say just a quick prayer here, not just for Mikey, because he would not have it that way, but for all the Jewish heroes whose sacrifice is what has made this dream not a dream but a reality. So on the inside panel we'll say, I'll just say the Hebrew and we can say the English together in memory of Israel's heroes throughout history. We'll do the El Malei Rachamim and the Kaddish.
It's still fairly quiet here. Most people are either in school or at work.
I'm a resident alien among you. Sell me a burial site among you that I may bury my dead.
Hi Abraham, my name is Ephron.
Hi Ephron. Now I know you have this beautiful piece of land.
I do.
And it's got this wonderful cave in it called Machpelah. I would really like you to sell me, for a lot of money I'm prepared to pay, this field of Machpelah so I can bury Sarah.
Oh, Abraham! What's a little cave between people who just met 2 seconds ago? Take the land, it's yours. Bury your Sarah.
That's really kind of you, but I don't want to take the land. I want to buy it. I want to have it listed in my name in the registry forever after, because that's where I want to bury my wife.
No, but really, in front of all these other Hittites here who are going to think that I'm such a great guy when I offer you this land for free.
I don't want your free gift. I want to pay for something that's going to be mine, not just permission.
Well,
to bury.
Abraham, I really wouldn't want to give you a land whose real value is 400 shekels, so don't forget that. But I would like you to give this 400 shekel land to you.
400 shekel was about like $3 million at the time, which Abraham says,
I just happen to have it.
take the money, it's mine, right? And he goes and makes the deal. And he specifies, I want the land and the cave that is in it.
Everything.
The hill opposite over there is the Tell of Hebron. The original Hebron in biblical times. Lots of it has been found. You can actually see next to the little army base on top. If you look carefully, a big Chanukiah next to it.
The tradition has it this is where Adam and Eve are buried. Jacob's.
It's actually underneath the room between Abraham and...
Find out more about Tel Aviv than our first stop this morning, but so far, you don't look like that sort to me.
Yep, that is a coffee kiosk. Coffee and tea, they might even have a pastry.
You know why they have final solution?
The Re'i Noah. You see, and it moves.
Important spots, certainly in the city of Tel Aviv and probably in the state of Israel. I never had a different opinion. And Israelis are probably...
Some of these places are going for $10 million a pop. Now the medical school, merely because we realized actually we don't have...
7211. We're looking for a hybrid van.
I'm going to buy some more.
This is one of 25 clock towers that were built.
This is Tel Jaffa. What is a tell? It's something we never really touched upon on this trip. Whenever we were kids, we would do the hat trick. A long time ago in ancient times, right, there were very few people inhabiting the earth. And they came to various places and they said, oh look, here's a hill with its own water supply. Own water supply, not far from the top of the hill. Top of the hill is a good place to settle. It's a nice bare place, there's nothing in the way, no undergrowth. And so we, the people of Kippah, are going to settle on this hill that is Ruvain Hill. So the people of Kippur indeed did settle on Ruvain Hill, and all was good. And then another, much more violent group of people came along, right? Aggressive looking, wanted a new place to settle, and they were warlike and found the people of Kippur and said, "Ha ha, we can beat them." And indeed, the Itkites came and they walloped the people of Kippur and got rid of them. Said, "You know what? This is a good kind of place to settle. It's a hill, it's higher up than the land around it, and it's got its own water supply. We're going to clear out the rubble and make our own town, the town of ITC." And indeed they did, and all was good. But not long later, there was another, much more warlike, aggressive people. Oh, this is amazing, this is biblical. The people of the Eye.
AI.
The Adath.
The Adath Israelites. And the Adath Israelites were a warlike, aggressive people. And they went to battle against the Itkas.
Led by their fearless rabbi.
The Itkas surely and squarely. And after it was gone, they said, "You know what? It's kind of nice. It's a hill, a little bit above all the area around it, good for defense, got its own water supply. We're going to smooth out the rubble and build our own town of Adath Israel." And indeed they did. And all was good. Not long after that, there was a new warlike kind of people that came along, and they were very aggressive. They were the sailfishes. And the sailfishes went to war against the people of Adath Israel and did indeed smite them surely. And not long afterwards they said, "But you know what? This hill, higher up than the land above it, with its own little water source, is a good place to settle. Let's do that." And they smoothed out the rubble of Adath Israel, right?
Yes.
Right? And they built the town of Sailfish. And all was good. But a little while later, there was another, way more aggressive and warlike people. The people of Chai. And they went to war and boldly smote the Sailfish. And indeed reduced their town unto rubble. And indeed it was. And then they said unto themselves, "But this is a beautiful place, with a hill higher up with a commanding view, with its own little water source. Let's smooth out the rubble and build our town." And indeed, the people of Chai built their town upon Ruvain Hill, over the ruins of the civilizations before them. And then, untowardly, it was 2 years before the great earthquake. And 2 years passed quickly, and there was a great earthquake. And there was nobody left. And the hill gathered dust and nothing else for the centuries that followed. And a little while later, along came a new group of people, the archaeologists. And they said, "Here's a flat kind of hill. There must have been a civilization up here. Let's go digging and see what we can find." And in the early days, what they actually do is take like a cake slice out of here, and you see all the different civilizations that have been here. The problem being that you only get what was in that cake slice. You've got no clue what else was around it. And so eventually archaeologists changed their methodology, and they started peeling off tells layer by layer. And after they'd found out everything they could find the material culture of the Chaiites, right, there was nothing left to see except in museums, and everything we ever needed about the Chaiites was known, right? And not long after that, they started examining the material culture of what was left of the sailfishes. And they learned everything they could about the creation of the people of the sailfishes, learned much about them and wrote many new textbooks and put it in history. But the era of the sailfishes was no longer known in situ, as all of it had been carted off to museums and photographed. But nevertheless, there was still much more work to do, and as soon as they got funding, they did it, right? And indeed, in its place were the Adath Israelites, right here. And they learned everything they could know about the Adath Israelites and their great leader, him. And they peeled it all off, took photographs, put the rest in museums, and there was nothing left to be seen of the Adath Israelites, except they knew lots now, it was all in museums. And instead they found the remains of the ancient culture of Itk, right? And they peeled off everything that could be found in the little excavation pits about the people of Itk. And the Itkites were no more, but there was lots about them in museums and textbooks. And they found the very simple, primitive people of Kippur. And slowly they removed what was left of the material culture of the civilization of Kippur, and were left at the bedrock, that little hill with absolutely no undergrowth to disturb anything that would ever be there. And they thought, let's dig into the bedrock and see what we can find. And Reuven said, no! And that's basically how a tell in archaeology works.
This would have been the gateway to come and go for 4,000 years, going back to the time of Abraham. This is old even by Israel standards old. And so to be here on the evening that we're now going to take off with such ease without having to think about it in such way, and God willing have a safe flight, but to be at this what we call a liminal space, right? A space between one area and the return to our everyday lives is very, very significant. Some of the experience of arriving here has to be taken with us as we have the experience of leaving here. And to be standing at the place where for 4,000 years that happened, that arrival and that departure, is in many ways much more significant than the nice jetways that we'll experience tonight. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ha'oseh hayam hagadol.
Amen. Amen.
Here we are at our table, our final meal in Israel. Any, I've got 6 minutes left. Any thoughts of the trip? Anybody want to say anything?
I think it's been a trip of a lifetime. I'm thrilled that we came with you guys, Mark and Nancy and Flo, and I made a bunch more friends.
So we had the inspirational trip of a lifetime. Got our vows renewed on the mount, and we finished up on the hill of Jaffa.
I just feel very fortunate that I was able to make this trip to Israel, a country I never thought I would visit, and also very fortunate that I was able to go with such wonderful people and making new friends.
This has been a life-changing experience for me. Another way that I've connected with my Judaism that will help me connect to my Judaism. How about you? John? Yeah.
Hi, I'm finally on the camera. This is our last night. In fact, this is our last dinner, and this has been a life-changing trip. It has just broadened my perspectives, has made my Judaism come to life, and enriched it, and I'm so glad to have done this with the love of my life.